The Empire Strikes Back wasn't just a sequel, it was a cinematic miracle that almost never happened. Behind the iconic moments, the legendary performances, and the jaw-dropping revelations, this film nearly destroyed the Star Wars universe forever. From deadly blizzards to rotting props, from industry battles to career-ending risks, these secrets will change how you see the greatest space opera ever made. But before we dive into the shocking truth behind your favorite scenes, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what's coming next in our deep dive series. Number 20. The deadly blizzard that almost killed Star Wars. When the crew arrived in Finse, Norway to film the Hoth scenes, they expected snow. What they got was a survival nightmare that nearly shut down production forever. The area was hit by its biggest blizzard in decades, trapping the entire cast and crew in their hotel for days. Roads were completely blocked, equipment froze solid, and the temperatures dropped so dangerously low that filming seemed impossible. Director Irvin Kershner made a desperate decision that would define the opening of Empire. He sent Mark Hamill, dressed as Luke Skywalker, out into the real storm with just a handheld camera. No lighting rigs, no safety nets, just pure survival filmmaking. Those haunting shots of Luke wandering through the icy wasteland weren't filmed on a soundstage, they were captured steps from their hotel lobby while the actors literally fought for their lives against nature. Hamill's eyelids actually froze between takes, and they could only shoot for minutes at a time before the equipment jammed. The result? Some of the most authentic, desperate footage in cinema history, born from real danger. Number 19. A car crash that rewrote Star Wars history. The Wampa attack wasn't originally in the script. That brutal scene where Luke gets his face clawed open was written to cover up a real-world tragedy. Just before filming began, Mark Hamill had been in a devastating car accident that left his face severely injured, with broken bones and permanent scars. The studio panicked. His appearance had noticeably changed, and they considered everything from avoiding close-ups to completely recasting the role. But instead of hiding the damage, the writers made a brilliant decision. They created the Wampa, an unseen snow beast that mauls Luke's face in the opening act, providing the perfect in-universe explanation for Hamill's altered appearance. It wasn't just clever writing, it was narrative surgery that turned real-world trauma into storytelling gold. The scarred, weathered Luke Skywalker we see in Empire feels more authentic because the pain was genuine. Hamill didn't just survive that crash, he folded it into the character, making Luke's journey feel more real and vulnerable than ever before. Number 18. The Tauntaun from Hell. That unforgettable scene where Han slices open the Tauntaun to save Luke looked convincingly gross on screen. But the reality behind the cameras was far worse. The Tauntaun wasn't just a latex prop, it was a festering nightmare designed to steam under the studio lights. The special effects team stuffed the outer shell with a horrific mixture of rotting meat, canned tuna, and slime to create realistic internal organs. Under the hot studio lights, this concoction didn't just look authentic, it created a stench so overwhelming that cast and crew members were literally gagging between takes. By the second day of filming, the heat had cooked the mixture into something so putrid that Grip said it was the worst smell they'd encountered on any film set, including Jaws. The odor was so unbearable that they had to rush through the scene and immediately burn the entire prop after filming wrapped. What looked like sci-fi magic on screen smelled like death in reality, but that authentic disgust from the actors made the survival stakes feel genuinely desperate. Number 17. The Carbon Freeze Chamber of Death. The Carbon Freeze Chamber scene is one of the most emotionally powerful moments in Star Wars, but filming it was literally life-threatening. The set was built as a closed soundstage filled with smoke machines, steam vents, and blazing hot lights with almost no ventilation. Between takes, crew members were collapsing from heat exhaustion and had to be dragged outside to recover. Billy D. Williams described it as working in a sauna with no escape, while Harrison Ford was drenched in sweat under heavy costumes, trying to deliver what might have been Han Solo's final lines in the franchise. The oppressive heat and suffocating atmosphere weren't just uncomfortable, they were dangerous. The irony was perfect. To create movie magic, everyone had to suffer through conditions that felt like actual torture. That discomfort translated directly into the performances, making Han's goodbye feel genuinely desperate and final. The audience remembers the iconic "I love you and I know" exchange, but behind every emotional beat was the very real struggle of actors pushing through physical agony to capture the scene. But if you think that was the worst smell on set, wait until you hear about the swamp that nearly shut down production entirely. Number 16. The Dagobah Disaster. Dagobah looked like a mystical alien swamp on screen, but behind the scenes it reeked like a backed-up sewer system. The elaborate swamp set was constructed on a massive London soundstage, complete with real water, imported tropical plants, and atmospheric fog machines. The problem? Once those powerful studio lights hit the organic materials, everything started rotting at an accelerated pace. The stagnant water began fermenting, Mold spread across every surface, and the imported vegetation decomposed in the artificial heat. The stench became so overwhelming that the entire cast and crew were gagging their way through each day of filming. Production had to be completely shut down while they drained the entire swamp, baked the floor with industrial heaters overnight, and then pumped in chemical fog the next morning just to mask the lingering smell. What appeared mystical and otherworldly on film was actually a biological nightmare that made Dagobah feel less like a movie set and more like something genuinely alive and rotting. The smell wasn't the only challenge making this alien world feel authentic. The lead actor was about to face weeks of isolation that would test his sanity. Number 15. Harrison Ford's calculated rebellion. That legendary "I know" response wasn't the spontaneous improvisation that fans believe it to be. It was a carefully negotiated battle between actor and director. Harrison Ford had read the original scripted line where Han was supposed to respond, "I love you too," and absolutely hated it. He felt it was too soft, too sentimental for a character like Han Solo. Ford spent days arguing with the writers and director, insisting that Han needed something rougher, more authentic to his personality. The final "I know" wasn't born in the moment. It was the result of intense discussions about who Han Solo really was as a character. When they finally filmed the scene, Ford delivered the line with complete confidence because he'd fought for it. The pause, the cocky smirk, the casual acceptance of Leia's declaration, all of it was calculated to show Han's character growth while staying true to his rebellious nature. That single moment of defiance against the script created one of the most quoted lines in cinema history, proving that sometimes the best performances come from actors who refuse to play it safe. Speaking of performances that nearly didn't happen, one beloved character almost got completely erased from the film. Number 14. The puppet that almost destroyed Star Wars. Yoda was nearly cut from The Empire Strikes Back entirely, and it had nothing to do with budget constraints. Studio executives were terrified that audiences would never accept a foam puppet as a wise Jedi master. They looked at the script and panicked. Luke Skywalker was going to spend half the movie having philosophical conversations with what looked like a Muppet Show character. This wasn't Alec Guinness in flowing robes. This was a rubber creature built by Jim Henson's team, and the suits were convinced it would kill the franchise. Even George Lucas had serious doubts about whether a puppet could carry the emotional weight required for Yoda's role. The pressure fell entirely on Frank Oz, who had to prove that he could bring soul to foam and latex. The gamble was enormous. If Yoda failed, it wouldn't just ruin the character, it would make Luke's entire training arc seem ridiculous. But Oz delivered a performance so convincing that by the time Yoda lifted the X-Wing from the swamp, nobody was questioning the puppet anymore. The success of Yoda's character proved that movie magic didn't need expensive effects. Sometimes it just needed an incredible performer willing to disappear behind their craft. Number 13. The Oscar snub that still stings. Frank Oz gave one of the most emotionally powerful performances in film history, but the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences refused to even acknowledge it existed. When Oscar season arrived, The Empire Strikes Back was recognized for technical achievements like sound and visual effects, but Frank Oz received nothing. No nomination, not even a mention. The Academy's reasoning was simple and heartbreaking. Puppeteering wasn't considered real acting, despite the fact that Oz had created a character who moved audiences to tears worldwide. Critics raved about the soul in Yoda's eyes, fans connected with his wisdom and humor, and even other actors praised Oz's incredible performance. But to the Academy, it was just a puppet on sticks, unworthy of recognition alongside real performances. This wasn't just an oversight, it was a fundamental misunderstanding of what acting truly means. Oz had to convey emotion, wisdom, and spiritual depth using nothing but his voice and hand movements, arguably making his performance more challenging than traditional acting. That dismissal still echoes today, representing Hollywood's struggle to recognize innovative forms of storytelling and performance. But while the Academy ignored Oz's brilliance, the technical artists were creating something equally groundbreaking. Number 12. The hand-drawn light that changed cinema. Every glowing lightsaber in The Empire Strikes Back was created through an exhausting process that would be unthinkable today. Before CGI existed, animators had to trace each blade frame by frame using colored pencils on high-contrast film. A single lightsaber duel required up to 15,000 individual drawings, with artists meticulously adding brightness, flicker, and motion blur to each frame. The process was backbreaking, requiring incredible patience and precision, but it gave the lightsabers that raw, unstable energy that fans still remember decades later. The hand-drawn technique created something that digital effects struggle to replicate, an organic, almost alive quality to the light. Each frame had tiny variations and imperfections that made the sabers feel powerful and dangerous rather than clinical and perfect. When Luke ignites his blade, that glow isn't computer-generated pixels. It's the passion and dedication of artists who believed in the Force strongly enough to draw it into existence, one painstaking frame at a time. But while artists were creating magic with pencils, the model makers were pulling off tricks that defied physics itself. Number 11. The ship that never moved. The asteroid chase sequence feels like pure kinetic energy. The Millennium Falcon dodging death at impossible speeds, rocks exploding around the cockpit, the camera whipping through space at breakneck pace. But here's the mind-bending truth. The Millennium Falcon never moved a single inch during filming. The entire chase was created by mounting the ship model on a stationary stand and spinning the camera around it in complex patterns. Every asteroid was filmed separately. Every movement was programmed with precision motion control rigs, and every explosion was timed to the millisecond. That incredible shot where a massive rock explodes near the Falcon and the camera spins dramatically around the ship, it's only 1.7 seconds of screen time, but it took over 3 weeks to film. The model makers had to account for lighting, timing, camera angles, and the positioning of dozens of separate asteroid models. In 1980, movie magic meant smoke machines, miniatures, and optical printers running through the night. No shortcuts, just pure handcrafted adrenaline that somehow felt more real than anything computers could create. The illusion was so convincing that audiences never questioned the physics, but the sound design was about to ground them in an even more visceral reality. Number 10. The mechanical monsters that shook the earth. Those terrifying AT-AT walkers didn't just look intimidating, they sounded like genuine war machines, thanks to an ingenious discovery by sound designer Ben Burtt. The thunderous footsteps that made audiences feel each step in their bones weren't created in any high-tech studio. Burtt found the perfect sound in an industrial factory, a massive punch press slamming down onto concrete with bone-rattling violence. The mechanical rhythm wasn't just loud, it was genuinely threatening, like hearing the heartbeat of a metal monster. But Burtt didn't stop there. He slowed down the punch press sounds, layered in animalistic growls and metallic scrapes, then twisted the audio until it became something alien yet familiar. The result was pure sonic storytelling. You could hear the weight, the power, and the relentless advance of the Imperial war machines. That's the genius of Star Wars sound design. You think you're hearing futuristic technology, but you're actually experiencing transformed reality that somehow feels more authentic than the real thing. The attention to authentic detail extended to every aspect of production, including elements that audiences took for granted. Number 9. The crawl that broke Hollywood rules. That iconic opening crawl didn't float across space through digital wizardry. It was a physical construction project that required old-school movie magic. The text was printed as yellow letters on black material, laid out on a massive 6-foot board, and filmed with a camera slowly tracking upward 1 careful inch at a time. Every wobble in the text, every slight tilt, every flicker of light reflecting off the surface was completely real. If the camera operator lost focus for even a moment, they'd have to start the entire sequence over from the beginning. The process was painstakingly slow, requiring hours of work to capture just a few seconds of usable footage. But George Lucas was obsessed with making it feel like ancient mythology, like a story that existed long before the camera started rolling. He wanted the audience to feel like they were witnessing a legend being retold, not just watching a movie begin. That physical, handcrafted approach gave the crawl a weight and permanence that digital text couldn't replicate. But Lucas's attention to detail was about to cause a massive industry controversy that would change his relationship with Hollywood forever. Number 8. The Guild War that changed everything. George Lucas made a decision that broke fundamental Hollywood rules and triggered a battle with the industry's most powerful organization. The Empire Strikes Back opens without any director credit. No a film by, no names, just stars, space, and story. This violated the Directors Guild of America's strict requirements, but Lucas refused to compromise his vision. He wanted Empire to feel like a continuation of the Star Wars universe, not a resume showcase or ego trip. The Guild's response was swift and brutal. They fined Lucas not once but twice. When he paid the fines out of his own pocket without backing down, they went after the film's producer as well. Lucas was so furious with their interference that he quit the Directors Guild entirely and vowed never to work within their system again. This wasn't just about credits, it was about creative control and the right to tell stories without industry politics interfering. Most filmmakers would have caved under that pressure, but Lucas walked away from the establishment to protect his artistic vision. That decision shaped not just Star Wars, but his entire approach to independent filmmaking for the rest of his career. Number 7. The gamble that nearly bankrupted. A genius. While most directors fight tooth and nail to get studio funding, George Lucas made the terrifying decision to walk away from guaranteed money and finance The Empire Strikes Back entirely himself. After the original Star Wars shattered box office records, every studio in Hollywood was throwing blank checks at Lucas, offering him unlimited budgets and creative control. But Lucas didn't want their money if it came with their interference. He wanted absolute freedom to tell his story without notes, changes, or compromises. So Lucas made a choice that could have destroyed him. He turned down the studios and funded the entire sequel using profits from toys, merchandise, and massive personal loans. When production inevitably went over budget, he didn't ask for help. He borrowed more money, refinanced his assets, and stared down bankruptcy just to finish the film his way. If Empire had failed commercially, Lucas would have lost everything: Skywalker Ranch, Industrial Light and Magic, and even the Star Wars franchise itself. The stakes were so high that Lucas was literally betting his entire future on a darker, more experimental middle chapter that broke every sequel formula. But his faith in the story was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. Number 6. The love triangle that rewrote itself. The awkward romantic tension between Luke, Leia, and Han wasn't always so complicated. In the earliest drafts of the Star Wars saga, Luke and Leia were meant to be the central romantic couple. Their flirtation in A New Hope wasn't accidental. It was the planned emotional core of the story. But as Lucas developed the larger mythology, he realized he needed a bigger twist for the trilogy's climax. The idea of Luke and Leia being siblings was slowly taking shape, which meant their romantic arc had to be completely rewritten. By the time Empire was in full production, the love story had shifted to focus on Han and Leia's relationship instead. But traces of the original plan still lingered in scenes that felt emotionally mixed: the tension, the meaningful looks, and that famous kiss between Luke and Leia. It wasn't a mistake or poor writing, it was a story evolving in real time as Lucas built the galaxy and figured out whose hearts belonged where. This kind of dramatic restructuring was happening throughout the film, but nothing was more secretive than the revelation that would change everything. Number 5. The secret that only 3 people knew. I am your father. 4 words that changed cinema history, but when it came time to film that scene, even the script was lying. David Prowse, the imposing actor inside the Darth Vader suit, was handed a completely fake line to deliver. Obi-Wan killed your father. Only 3 people on the entire production knew the real twist: George Lucas, director Irvin Kershner, and Mark Hamill. Even the rest of the cast and crew were kept in the dark about one of the most important moments in film history. Hamill only learned the truth minutes before filming the scene. Kershner pulled him aside privately, whispered the real line, and gave him a crucial warning: don't overact the moment, don't tell anyone what really happened, and just let the shock hit naturally. Hamill's controlled, heartbreaking reaction wasn't just great acting, it was genuine surprise and confusion processed in real time. The secrecy was so complete that most of the cast didn't know what had actually happened until they saw the finished film in theaters alongside regular audiences. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. The secret didn't stay as hidden as everyone thought. Number 4. The spoiler, hidden in plain sight. Months before The Empire Strikes Back reached theaters, the biggest spoiler in movie history was accidentally revealed at a fan convention, and absolutely nobody believed it. David Prowse, who played Darth Vader's physical form but never heard the real dialogue because his voice was always dubbed over, was answering questions from fans about what might happen in the sequel. Someone asked him to speculate about the plot, and Prowse casually mentioned, "Oh, I think Darth Vader turns out to be Luke's father." The crowd laughed it off as a joke or confused speculation. The press ignored it completely. After all, Prowse never saw the real script, never heard the actual dialogue, and was just the guy in the suit. How could he possibly know the film's biggest secret? But somehow, whether through intuition or accidentally overhearing something, Prowse had guessed the exact twist that would define the entire saga. The revelation was sitting there in plain sight, dismissed as nonsense because it seemed too incredible to be true. The greatest spoiler in cinema history was protected not by security or legal threats, but by the simple fact that nobody could believe it was real. But this wasn't the only composite creation hiding in the shadows. Number 3. The Emperor's terrifying origin. The first time audiences saw the Emperor in The Empire Strikes Back, they were actually looking at a Frankenstein monster created from 3 completely different performers. That menacing holographic figure wasn't Ian McDiarmid. He wouldn't take over the role until Return of the Jedi. Instead, the Emperor was a bizarre composite designed to be as otherworldly and threatening as possible. The face belonged to Marjorie Eaton, an elderly actress filmed under heavy shadows and prosthetic makeup to create an ancient, withered appearance. But something was missing from her performance. The eyes didn't feel alien enough. So the special effects team made an absolutely wild decision. They superimposed actual gorilla eyes over Eaton's, using real animal footage to give the Emperor a predatory, non-human stare that would haunt viewers. Then came the voice provided by Clive Reville, a veteran voice actor whose cold, regal delivery made the character feel like an ancient evil awakening from the shadows. 3 performers, 1 terrifying presence. Before CGI could seamlessly blend digital elements, The Empire Strikes Back created its ultimate villain like a movie myth. Part woman, part beast, part disembodied voice, all designed to feel like something that shouldn't exist. Number 2. The armor that almost stayed pristine. Boba Fett's iconic look almost never happened. Early concept art showed him in spotless white stormtrooper armor, clean and sterile like every other Imperial soldier. He looked more like a mass-produced prototype than the legendary bounty hunter who would capture fans' imaginations. The design felt empty, too polished, lacking any personality or history that would make him memorable among the dozens of other armored characters in the Star Wars universe. But then someone had a brilliant idea. What if this armor told a story? The design team started weathering the suit, adding scuff marks, chipped paint, dents, and stains that suggested this was someone who'd been through hell and survived to tell about it. They changed the color scheme to green and gray, making him look like a military veteran who'd stopped caring about regulations long ago. Every scratch and smudge implied battles fought, contracts completed, and enemies defeated. That transformation from pristine to battle-worn turned Boba Fett from a background extra into a legend. He barely speaks, barely moves, but the armor communicates everything audiences need to know. This is someone who survived more than most, and didn't come here to make friends. Number 1. The film that nearly killed Star Wars forever. Today, The Empire Strikes Back is hailed as the masterpiece of the trilogy, but in 1980, it almost ended Star Wars permanently. Critics were sharply divided on the darker tone, the unresolved ending, and the dramatic shift away from the adventure formula that made the original film such a phenomenon. Unlike A New Hope's record-breaking opening, Empire didn't explode into theaters with universal acclaim. It made solid money, around $538 million worldwide, but fell far short of the massive expectations Lucas was betting his entire financial future on. Behind the scenes, everything was on the line. Lucas had mortgaged his house, borrowed against future profits, and invested everything he owned into this risky middle chapter. If Empire had failed commercially, there would be no Return of the Jedi, no expanded universe, no prequels, no sequels, just a broken cliffhanger and a galaxy cut short. The film industry was watching to see if Lucas's gamble on independence and creative control would pay off or destroy one of cinema's most promising franchises. The Empire Strikes Back didn't just strike back. It revolutionized what sequels could be, proved that independent filmmaking could compete with studio systems, and created a legacy that continues to shape cinema nearly half a century later. From deadly blizzards to rotting props, from industry battles to career-defining risks, this film survived every obstacle to become the gold standard for science fiction storytelling. If you've got a favorite Empire moment that still gives you chills, drop it in the comments below, and let us know what legendary film we should uncover next. May the Force be with you, but remember, the truth always strikes harder.